Hello, this is JoLaine Minor. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of the compliance presentations for Section 3 requirements. The department put in effect the Section 3 new rule in July 2022 for the CDBG grants administered by the Office of Community Development. Federal Regulations 24 CFR Part 75. Section 3 applies to CDBG-assisted housing rehabilitation and public construction projects when the total amount of assistance to the project exceeds $200,000. That is regardless of the contracted price. It is the total amount of assistance. If that exceeds $200,000, then Section 3 applies. The project is the site or sites together with any buildings and improvements located on the site that are under common ownership, management, and financing. Section 3 applies to CDBG grantees and contractors and subcontractors working on CDBG grant-funded projects. Section 3 does not apply to professional services contract labor hours for construction oversight, engineering, or architectural engineering, or material supply contracts. Section 3 regulations should not be construed to mean that recipients are required to hire Section 3 workers or award contracts to Section 3 business concerns other than what is needed to complete covered projects and activities. Section 3 requires economic opportunities be directed to low and very low income persons, and priority of assistance should be given to recipients of government assistance for housing and business concerns which provide economic opportunities to low and very low income persons. Section 3 requires that to the greatest extent possible, businesses and employers working on CDBG-funded projects must make a good faith effort to train and employ low-income individuals living in the local area and contract with businesses owned by or that employ Section 3 workers. A Section 3 worker is any worker who currently fits or when hired within the past 5 years, fit at least one of the following 3 categories and must be documented. The worker's income for the previous or annualized year is below the income limit established by HUD. The worker is employed by a Section 3 business concern, or the worker is a youth build participant. A targeted Section 3 worker meets the definition of a Section 3 worker and currently is employed by a Section 3 business concern or currently fits or when hired in the past 5 years fits at least one of the following categories, which must be documented as either low or very low income workers residing within the service area as defined, or is a youth build participant. Youth Build is a community-based pre-apprenticeship program for at-risk youth ages 16 to 24 who have previously dropped out of high school. A Section 3 business concern is a business that meets at least one of the following criteria within the last 6 months and must be documented. It is at least 51% owned and controlled by low or very low income persons. Over 75% of the labor hours performed by the business are performed by low or very low income persons, or it is a business at least 51% owned and controlled by public housing residents or residents who currently live in Section 8 assisted housing. A service area under Section 3 is an area within 1 mile of the Section 3 project. If fewer than 5,000 people live within 1 mile of the project, it is within a circle centered on the project location that is sufficient to encompass a population of 5,000 people according to the most recent U.S. Census. Section 3 goals and benchmarks established by HUD are as follows. Contractors and subcontractors will be required, to the greatest extent feasible, meet both benchmarks. 25% labor hours should be worked by Section 3 workers. 5% of the total labor hours should be worked by targeted Section 3 workers. If these benchmarks are not met, the grantee and contractors must report on activities pursued in the absence of not meeting the Section 3 benchmarks. Grantees and contractors have responsibilities to meet Section 3. We'll start with the grantee's responsibilities. A local government that receives CDBG funding has the responsibility to comply with Section 3 requirements in its own operations and ensure compliance in the operations of its contractors and subcontractors. Grantees must notify Section 3 workers and business concerns about jobs and contracts generated by Section 3 covered assistance so that they may submit bids and proposals for available contracts and job openings with the grantee. They must notify potential contractors of their responsibilities under Section 3 and include Section 3 language in all applicable contracts. They must require contractors and subcontractors to meet the requirements of 24 CFR 75.19, regardless whether Section 3 language is included in the contracts. Document actions taken to meet HUD benchmarks and respond to Section 3 complaints. The grantee is also responsible for completing and submitting the required Section 3 forms to the department. Section 3 requirements must be included in the procurement and bid documents. This is part of the grantee's responsibilities. CDBG recipients must include Section 3 language and forms in all procurement and bid documents, including the Section 3 clause, the intent to comply with Section 3 form, and the contractor's requirements form. The contractor's requirements under Section 3. The prime contractor must submit the intent to comply with Section 3 form with the bid packet. Failure to do so shall result in the bid being incomplete. The prime contractor must notify all subcontractors of their responsibilities under Section 3. The prime contractor must provide a permanent workforce breakdown of all current employees and identify Section 3 workers that were hired within the last 5 years. The prime contractor must provide an estimated breakdown of potential hires for the awarded project and timeline of anticipated hiring. The prime contractor must refrain from contracting with subcontractors as to whom they have received notice or have knowledge that the subcontractors have been found in violation of the regulations in 24 CFR Part 75. Contractors are required to maintain records that document a good faith effort to utilize Section 3 workers and target Section 3 workers as trainees and employees and any other qualitative efforts to comply with Section 3. These requirements apply to both contractors and subcontractors. Record-keeping requirements for recipients are found at 24 CFR 75.31. The contractor is required to maintain documentation to demonstrate compliance with the regulations and is responsible for requiring their subcontractors to maintain or provide any documentation that will assist recipients in demonstrating compliance, including documentation that shows hours worked by Section 3 workers and targeted Section 3 workers. Section 3 requires priority consideration be given to residents in Section 3 businesses. CDBG grantees and contractors shall provide priority consideration to Section 3 residents and Section 3 businesses for new training, employment, and contracting opportunities generated as a result of the expenditure of Section 3 covered financial assistance. Failure to comply with the requirements of Section 3 may result in a monitoring finding or sanctions that may include debarment or suspension of funds, termination of the grant agreement or contract, and limited denial of participation in the State of Illinois CDBG programs. Outreach under Section 3. Grantees must develop a Section 3 plan including outreach to Section 3 workers and businesses within the municipality. Please see the CDBG Section 3 plan for samples of best practices. We're going to cover reporting requirements under Section 3. Recipients will be asked to report to DCEO the Section 3 and targeted Section 3 work hours for each project, as well as other non-qualitative activities conducted to comply with the Section 3 requirements. Reporting of labor hours. Recipients must report in a manner prescribed by HUD the total number of labor hours worked, the total number of labor hours worked by Section 3 workers, and the total number of labor hours worked by targeted Section 3 workers. The documentation needed to demonstrate the Section 3 status of the worker, contractor, or subcontractor as required is as follows. These forms are available in the Section 3 plan and include the Section 3 worker certification, the Section 3 business concern certification, the Section 3 business owner certification, and the contractor permanent workforce. Additional documentation will be required with the contractor permanent workforce form. The report which tracks the labor hours is the Section 3 contractors report. It tracks Section 3 and targeted Section 3 worker hours on CDBG funded projects. This must be maintained through the duration of the project. This form must be completed by each contractor and subcontractor. The prime contractor submits to the grantee or administrator weekly with the payrolls. The grant administrator should complete for the entire project based on the contractor's submissions. This form must be submitted to DCEO as compliant with the Section 3 reporting requirements. Even if no Section 3 workers were utilized, this report must be completed and submitted to DCEO at the end of the project. Okay, additional reporting is safe harbor compliance. This is required if the Section 3 benchmarks are not met. The grantee and contractor working on the project must complete the safe harbor compliance form. This must be maintained in the project file and include documentation of effort. Each form must be submitted with the grant closeout package. Examples of safe harbor compliance and the qualitative efforts that have previously been mentioned. Engage in outreach efforts to generate job applicants who are targeted Section 3 workers. Provide training or apprenticeship opportunities. Provide technical assistance to help Section 3 workers compete for jobs. Provide or connect Section 3 workers with assistance in seeking employment, including drafting resumes, preparing job interviews, and finding job opportunities, connecting residents to job placement services. Hold one or more job fairs. Provide referrals for Section 3 workers to services supporting work readiness and retention. Provide assistance to apply for and/or attend community college, a 4-year educational institution, or vocational and technical training. Assist Section 3 workers to obtain financial literacy training and/or coaching. Engage in outreach efforts to identify and secure bids from Section 3 business concerns. Provide technical assistance to help Section 3 business concerns understand and bid on contracts. Divide contracts into smaller jobs to facilitate participation by Section 3 business concerns. Provide bonding assistance, guarantees, or other efforts to support viable bids from Section 3 business concerns. Promote use of business registries designed to create opportunities for disadvantaged and small businesses. Outreach, engagement, or referrals with the state one-stop system as defined in Section 121E2 of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. DCEO is required to annually report to HUD Section 3 accomplishments, including an aggregate of all labor hours worked, Section 3 labor hours, and targeted Section 3 labor hours. This is where the contractor's report comes in. We need your numbers. We are also required to report on the efforts made to identify and engage Section 3 workers and businesses when the Section 3 benchmarks were not met under Safe Harbor compliance for all projects funded under its CDBG program per program year. This is where the Safe Harbor compliance report comes in and the qualitative efforts to engage Section 3 workers and businesses during your construction projects. We need your reports. Okay, so I have broken it down the best I can, and we're going to go through the steps for complying with Section 3. Number 1, include Section 3 language in all advertisements and bid documents. Number 2, check HUD registry for Section 3 businesses located in the county in which the project is taking place. Check Illinois' Disadvantaged Business Registry as part of the BEP CMS for potential bidders within the service area and share CDBG opportunities with those businesses. Keep documentation of any correspondence with Section 3 businesses. 3, submit employment opportunities to Illinois WorkNet agencies and HUD's Opportunity Portal. Check the Opportunity Portal for Section 3 workers when filling open employment opportunities. 4, include the contractor's requirements and intent to comply with Section 3 requirements forms with all procurement documents. The intent to comply with the Section 3 requirements form must be signed by bidders and returned with the bid documents. If it is not, then that bidder is non-responsive. If a Section 3 business submits a bid for an opportunity associated with the CDBG project, the grantee must give priority to the greatest extent feasible. 6, describe Section 3 requirements at pre-bid meetings and the pre-construction conference. Document through notes, official meeting minutes, that this discussion took place and provide all required materials to the contractor. 7, include the Section 3 language in all contracts and subcontracts associated with the CDBG project. At the time the recipient and contractor enter into an agreement, identify if any employment or training opportunities will result from the CDBG grant-funded project. Post signs advertising employment, training, or subcontracting opportunities that will be available as a result of the Section 3 project and activities in conspicuous places at the work site where potential applicants can review them. Send notice of the opportunities to the Illinois WorkNet Local Job Center and HUD's Opportunity Portal. Use the Section 3 employment notice provided in the CDBG Section 3 plan. Inform contractors and subcontractors of hiring and training preferences to be given to Section 3 workers in order of priority as described in the Section 3 plan. Provide Section 3 contractors report, final Section 3 utilization report, Section 3 business certification, and Section 3 worker certification to contractors and subcontractors to document Section 3 businesses and workers. Use submitted Section 3 worker certification forms to identify which workers are Section 3 workers and targeted Section 3 workers. The hours worked by Section 3 workers and targeted Section 3 workers must be reported to DCEO. 9. Collect Section 3 data on a per-project basis from every contractor and subcontractor using the Section 3 contractors report submitted with the weekly payrolls. 10. Use data collected on the contractors report to report Section 3 efforts and accomplishments to DCEO. 11. Maintain documentation of qualitative efforts by the grantee and contractors and subcontractors to engage Section 3 workers in employment and training opportunities and to contract with Section 3 business concerns for reporting of safe harbor compliance when the Section 3 goals and benchmarks are not met. 12. Keep documentation of all worker, employer, and business certifications, as well as outreach efforts to Section 3 businesses and Section 3 workers on file for project monitoring. 9. Collect Section 3 data on a per-project basis from every contractor and subcontractor using the Section 3 contractors report submitted with the weekly payrolls. 10. Use data collected on the contractors report to report Section 3 efforts and accomplishments to DCEO. 11. Maintain documentation of qualitative efforts by the grantee and contractors and subcontractors to engage Section 3 workers in employment and training opportunities and to contract with Section 3 business concerns for reporting of safe harbor compliance when the Section 3 goals and benchmarks are not met. 12. Keep documentation of all worker, employer, and business certifications, as well as outreach efforts to Section 3 businesses and Section 3 workers on file for project monitoring. 9. Collect Section 3 data on a per-project basis from every contractor and subcontractor using the Section 3 contractors report submitted with the weekly payrolls. 10. Use data collected on the contractors report to report Section 3 efforts and accomplishments to DCEO. 11. Maintain documentation of qualitative efforts by the grantee and contractors and subcontractors to engage Section 3 workers in employment and training opportunities and to contract with Section 3 business concerns for reporting of safe harbor compliance when the Section 3 goals and benchmarks are not met. 12. Keep documentation of all worker, employer, and business certifications, as well as outreach efforts to Section 3 businesses and Section 3 workers on file for project monitoring. This screen lists information and resources available for Section 3. This concludes the Section 3 presentation, Part 2 of the Compliance section. Please stay tuned for Part 3, Construction Management. I will be discussing changes to the pre-construction conference checklist in minutes, the requirement for the contractor's profile form that is now required, and a construction management checklist that will be required for your grant files. I will also discuss a new project process guide that will aid you in the administration and the construction management process of your CDBG construction grants.